Krishna Krishna Hari Hari. Hari Rama 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 Hari Hari. Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So today we're reading from Canto 3, Chapter 20, verse 24, and it says, "The worshipful Brahma first laughed at their stupidity, but finding the shameless Asuras close upon him, he grew indignant and ran in great haste out of fear." Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Sexually inclined demons have no respect even for their father, and the best policy for a saintly father like Brahma is to leave such demoniac sons. In other words, his sons wanted to have sex with their father, Brahma, and they were demons. So the best policy for a saintly father like Brahma is to leave such demoniac sons. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, text, chapter 20, text number 25. He approached the personality of Godhead, who bestows all boons and who dispels the agony of his devotees and those who take shelter of his lotus feet. He manifests his innumerable transcendental forms for the satisfaction of his devotees. So Brahma does the right thing. He leaves the association of his own sons who have become shameless asuras. And he gets really upset and he runs in great haste out of fear. And what does he do? He approaches the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who bestows all boons, meaning blessings, and who dispels the agony of his devotees and those who take shelter of his lotus feet. He manifests his innumerable transcendental forms for the satisfaction of his devotees. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Here the words Bhaktanam Anurupatatma Darshanam means that the personality of Godhead manifests his multi forms according to the desires of the devotees. For example, Hanumanji, Vajrangaji, wanted to see the form of the Lord as the personality of Godhead Ramachandra, whereas other Vaishnavas want to see the form of Radha Krishna, and still other devotees want to see the Lord in the form of Lakshmi Narayana. The Mayavadi philosophers think that although all these forms are assumed by the Lord just as the devotees desire to see him, actually he is impersonal. From Brahma Samhita, however, we can understand that this is not so, for the Lord has multi forms. It is said in the Brahma Samhita, Advaita Achyutam. The Lord does not appear before the devotee because of the devotee's imagination. Brahma Samhita further explains that the Lord has innumerable forms. Ramadi Murtisu Kalaniyamena Tistan. He exhibits in millions and millions of forms. There are 8,400,000 species of living entities, but the incarnations of the Supreme Lord are innumerable. In the Bhagavatam, it is stated that as the waves in the sea cannot be counted, but appear and disappear continually, the incarnations and forms of the Lord are innumerable. A devotee is attached to a particular form, and it is that form which he worships. We have just described the first appearance of the boar within the universe. There are innumerable universes, and somewhere or other, the boar form is now existing. All the forms of the Lord are eternal. It is the devotee's inclination to worship a particular form, and he engages in devotional service to that form. In a verse in the Ramayana, Hanuman, the great devotee of Rama, said, I know that there is no difference between the Sita Rama, and Lakshmi Narayana forms of the Supreme Personality God. But nevertheless, the forms of Rama and Sita has absorbed my affection and love. Therefore, I want to see the Lord in the forms of Rama and Sita. Similarly, the Gaudiya Vaishnava loves the forms of Radha and Krishna and Rukmini at Dwarka. The words Bhaktanam Anurupatma Darshanam mean that the Lord is always pleased to favor the devotee in the particular form in which the devotee wants to worship and render service unto him. In this verse, it is stated that Brahma approached Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This form of the Lord is Shirodakshay Vishnu. Whenever there is some trouble and Brahma has to approach the Lord, he can approach Ishirodakshay Vishnu. And it is the grace of the Lord that whenever Brahma approaches about disturbances in the universe, the Lord gives him relief in so many ways. Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Okay, so now we'll go to the next verse, Canto 3, Chapter 20, Text 26. Well, let me just look at this purport for a second. Yeah, let's just go over this purport a little bit more. Dvaitama Chutamanadam Anantarupam Adyam Puranam Purusham Navayovanam Cha Vedesa Durlavam Atma Bhakto Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. So the Lord has innumerable or multi forms. And it's said in the Brahma Samhita, Advaitam Achutam, the Lord does not appear before the devotee because of the devotee's imagination. But Brahma Samhita further explains that the Lord has innumerable forms. Ramadi Murti Sukala Nimena Tistan. He exists in millions and millions of forms. There are 8,400,000 species of living entities, but the incarnations of the Supreme Lord are innumerable. In the Bhagavatam, it is stated that as the waves in the sea cannot be counted, but appear and disappear continually, the incarnations and forms of the Lord are innumerable. A devotee is attached to a particular form, and it is that form which he worships. Okay, so here we see the Lord is appearing in form as a boar, but not an ordinary boar. A boar would mean like a pig, but not an ordinary one. He's a transcendental boar in this universe. There are innumerable universes, and somewhere or other the boar form is now existing. All the forms of the Lord are eternal. It is the devotee's inclination to worship a particular form, and he engages in devotional service to that form. So the Lord is reciprocating with his devotees. And in a verse in the Ramayana, Hanuman, the great devotee of Rama, said, I know that there is no difference between Sita Rama and Lakshmi Narayana forms of the Supreme Personality Godhead. But nevertheless, the form of Rama and Sita has absorbed my affection and love. Therefore, I want to see the Lord in the forms of Rama and Sita. Similarly, the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, the Gaudiya Vaishnava loves the form of Radha and Krishna and Rukmini at Dwarka. The words Bhaktanam Anurupatma Darshanam mean the Lord is always pleased to favor the devotee in the particular form in which the devotee wants to worship and render service unto him. In this verse, it is stated that Brahma approached Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This form of the Lord is Shirodakshay Vishnu. So you have Garbhodakshay Vishnu and you have Shirodakshay Vishnu. You have different Vishnu forms. So whenever there is some trouble and Brahma has to approach the Lord, he can approach Kshirodakshayi Vishnu. And it is the grace of the Lord that whenever Brahma approaches about disturbances in the universe, the Lord gives him relief in so many ways. Well, you can see that there are demons everywhere, and even very powerful devotees, uh, they become troubled. And this was the condition of Brahma. So he had to approach the Lord, and one of the forms that he was very, let's say, happy to see, and that was Kshirodakshayi Vishnu. There's different forms of Vishnu, and the one uh, that the Brahma wants to see is Kshirodakshayi Vishnu. There's also Garbhodakshayi Vishnu and so forth. So the Lord has innumerable forms, and he satisfies the desires of the devotees who want to see him in a special form that they are attracted to. Okay, so the Lord does not appear before the devotee because because of the devotee's imagination. Very important point. Brahma Samhita before Brahma Samhita further explained that the Lord has innumerable forms. Ramadi Murti Sukha Nimena Tistan. He exists in millions and millions of forms. There are 8,400,000 species of living entities, but the incarnations of the Supreme Lord are innumerable. In the Bhagavatam, it is stated. Well, let's see. When we talk about the Lord, we're talking about the Lord of all living entities. So he can appear in all the living species because he's the father of all living entities. And he can appear even in other types of forms. So he can appear, in other words, in innumerable forms. And that's why it says here that in this verse, Ramadi Murtisu Kala Nimena Tistan, the Lord exists in millions and millions of forms. And there are 8,400,000 species of living entities, but the incarnations of the Supreme Lord are innumerable. So we cannot limit or come to the end of all the different forms of the Lord. Why? Because basically the Lord is in the fourth dimension. We are living in three dimensions: length, width, and breadth. But the Lord is living in four dimensions, which means that length, width, and breadth become they expand infinitely. So therefore, the Lord is in that fourth dimension where everything about him expands infinitely. He is not limited in any way. Now we live in the three dimensions. We are limited by length, width, and breadth. But the Lord is in the fourth dimension, which means everything about him is unlimited. There's no limit to his expansions and to his pastimes and to his glories, so forth. So that's why it says here that the Brahma approached the personality Godhead who bestows all boons, meaning all blessings, and who dispels the agony of his devotees and of those who take shelter of his lotus feet. He manifests his innumerable transcendental forms for the satisfaction of his devotees. So every form that the Lord displays are transcendental forms. In other words, they're not influenced by the modes of material nature. They're above the modes of material nature. All this is difficult for a materialist to understand. He'll always try and bring the Lord down to his own level or her own level. In other words, being limited by uh, length and width and breadth and so forth. But that is all false. The Lord is not limited, and he can assume any form he wants. And every one of those forms is transcendental and can be expanded unlimitedly. Therefore, it says, uh, the Lord does not appear before the devotee because of the devotee's imagination. Brahma Samhita further explains that the Lord has innumerable forms. He exists in millions and millions of forms. There are 8,400,000 species of living entities, but the incarnations of the Supreme Lord are innumerable. In the Bhagavatam, it is stated that as the waves in the sea cannot be counted, but appear and disappear continually, the incarnations and forms of the Lord are innumerable. A devotee is attached to a particular form or a particular form, and it is that form which he worships. We have just described the first appearance of the boar within this universe. There are innumerable universes. So somewhere or other, the boar form is now existing. All the forms of the Lord are eternal. It is a devotee's inclination to worship a particular form, and he engages in devotional service to that form. In a verse in the Ramayana, Hanuman, the great devotee of Rama, said, I know that there is no difference between the Sita Rama and Lakshmi Narayana forms of the Supreme Personality God, but nevertheless, the form of Rama and Sita has absorbed my affection and love. Therefore, I want to see the Lord in the forms of Rama and Sita. Similarly, the Gaudiya Vaishnava loves the forms Radha and Krishna and Rukmini at Dwarka. The words Bhaktanam, Anurupatma Darshanam mean that the Lord is always pleased to favor the devotee in a particular form in which the devotee wants to worship and render service unto him. In this verse, it is stated that Brahma approached Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This form of the Lord is Shirodakshay Vishnu. Whenever there is some trouble and Brahma has to approach the Lord, he can approach Shirodakshay Vishnu. And it is the grace of the Lord that whenever Brahma approaches about disturbances in the universe, the Lord gives him relief in so many ways. Well, now we see the relationship between a devotee and Lord Krishna. So Lord Brahma is a devotee of Lord Krishna, and he can approach him in any form that he is attracted to. So there are innumerable forms of the Lord, and there are also innumerable universes, and all the forms of the Lord are eternal. So it is the devotee's inclination to worship a particular form, and he engages in devotional service to that form. Okay, so Hanuman, he says, I know there are differences. There is no difference between Sita Rama and Lakshmi Narayana, forms of the Supreme Personality Godhead. But nevertheless, the form of Rama and Sita has absorbed my affection and love. Therefore, I want to see the Lord in the forms of Rama and Krishna. Similarly, the Gaudiya Vaishnava loves the forms of Radha and Krishna, and Rukmini, and Krishna and Rukmini at Dwarka. All right, so there's a lot of possibilities innumerable possibilities in Krishna consciousness of how you want to see the Lord, and how you can serve the Lord, and the pastimes of the Lord. Everything is unlimited in the spiritual world. And in the material world, everything is limited. Therefore, we have a choice. You want to be always limited and subjected to birth, death, old age, and disease, or you want to be unlimited in the spiritual, transcendental spiritual world, where it's full of love and devotion and transcendental pastimes. It's a choice we have to make. Okay, so now we'll go to Canto 3, Chapter 20, Text 26. Lord Brahma, approaching the Lord, addressed him thus: My Lord, please protect me from these sinful demons who were created by me under your order. They are infuriated by an appetite for sex and have come to attack me. So you see how shameless these sons of Brahma are. They want to have sex with Brahma. Means that's the beginning of homosexuality in the universe. It's been there since the beginning of time. And in the purport, Prabhupada says, it appears here that the homosexual appetite of males for each other is created in this episode of the creation of the demons by Brahma. In other words, the homosexual appetite of a man for another man is demoniac and is not for any sane male in the ordinary course of life. Amen, as they say. So we see that this homosexuality is there from the beginning of time, and it's still around. And it's, as Prabhupada says, the homosexual appetite of a man for another man is demoniac. There you are. My dear homosexuals in the world, you're all demons, as Krishna says. And they were so demoniac, meaning the males, sons of Brahma, that they wanted to have homosexual sex with Brahma. Therefore, Prabhupada says, in other words, the homosexual appetite of a man for another man is demoniac and is not for any sane male in the ordinary course of life. Now, when I was in Berkeley, there were devotees who were homosexual. And they used to celebrate, what do you call, what is that?
Pride,
Huh?
the festival.
Yeah, they would celebrate this one festival. Let me think what it is.
You're talking about the festival for the homosexual?
No,
Oh.
no. They were devotees, right?
Oh.
But they would celebrate. Which one was it? Anyway, I'll come to it. So, uh, uh, geez. Anyway, they would. There was a homosexual sannyasi also. This is all in Berkeley, or they call it Berkeley, and they would have celebrations where the homosexual sannyasi would officiate, and all the homosexuals would get together and they have a feast. So one time, there was this one homosexual that was always calling me up, and he said, and one time he said, "Oh, Harivilas, do you want Krishna consciousness movement to expand, don't you?" I said, "Yes." He said, "So I have a great idea to help you expand, the Krishna consciousness movement. the number of devotees. I said, okay, what is it? He said, well, I have a lot of friends and they are homosexuals. They would like to come to the temple and have programs. And I said, no way will I approve of that. And he said, oh my God, you don't want to spread Lord Chaitanya's mercy? I said, no, I do. Then why are you refusing? I said, because you have too many uh, adjectives. He said, what do you mean? I don't understand. I said, well, of course you don't understand, but I'll explain to you. You say that your group is a group of homosexual devotees. Is that right? He said, yes. I said, okay, well, you have too many adjectives there, and I can't accept it. He said, what? He said, I don't understand what you're saying. I said, you're giving a material bodily identification of your group. And that is not what Krishna consciousness is about. And so he said, I still don't understand. What are you talking about? I said, we don't say, I don't say that I am let's say, for example, a Armenian Vaishnava. I say I'm a Vaishnava. I don't identify with a particular uh, ethnic group. I identify myself as a Vaishnava of trying to be a Vaishnava of Krishna. And you're identifying yourself as a homosexual Vaishnava. There's no such thing. Either you're a Vaishnava or you're not a Vaishnava. But there's no such thing as a homosexual Vaishnava. That's an oxymoron. I said, what? Look up that word, oxymoron. So you see, and this initiated devotee, he was an initiated devotee for Srila Prabhupada. He was trying to convince me to invite all his friends to the temple and acknowledge that they are all Vaishnavas. What does it say? Oxymoron.
Um, a figure of speech that combines two seemingly contradictory or opposing terms to create a paradoxical effect.
There you, yeah, go ahead.
Often used to highlight a particular quality or to provoke thought by juxtaposing contrasting ideas.
Right. So the oxymoron. I'm a homosexual Hare Krishna. That's an oxymoron. You're superimposing something that is completely the opposite of the truth. See, there's no such thing as a homosexual devotee. There is such a thing as a devotee, but not a homosexual devotee, because we have four regulative principles: no meat eating, no gambling, no illicit sex, and no intoxication. So obviously, a homosexual person is a person who engages in homosexual activity or sex. So we cannot accept such a person as a devotee. But if they want to get rid of their adjectives and they just say, well, I'm just a devotee and I don't break the regulative principles. So when you say I'm a homosexual devotee, they're admitting that they break the principles. They're having sex with men. So that is a violation of the Krishna consciousness. But if they just say, I'm a devotee and my name is so and so, well, okay, we can accept that. that's what I explained to them. I said, you're coming to the temple with too many adjectives. Therefore, we cannot accept your desire to have a program in the temple. But if you come individually without those desires, then you're welcome in the temple and you can worship in the temple. You'll have prasadam, you'll have everything. But if you come with a group of people that all are identifying themselves in this specific way, which is against the principles of Krishna consciousness, you're not allowed to come here. So that was my final decision with him. And then, we say, oh, you don't want to spread the movement, Lord Chaitanya's movement, it's all about love. And I said, yeah, well, that is true. But Lord Chaitanya was not a homosexual and he was not catering to homosexuals. So let's tell what the truth is. He was a pure devotee of Krishna. And you should become a pure devotee of Krishna. You're not supposed to be a homosexual devotee. You're supposed to be a pure devotee. This is how crazy people are, really crazy. And what happened to this person? 2 or 3 years after that, he died of AIDS. See, that's what happens. You want to have homosexual relationships, you have a good chance of dying of AIDS, Okay, so that ends that. Are there any questions? So we'll go continue. And so here Prabhupada says, oh, by the way, I did read this verse to this person. This is like, I don't know now, maybe 20 years ago. Yeah. It appears here, Prabhupada says in Canto 3, Chapter 20, Text 26. It appears, this is the purport, it appears here that the homosexual appetite of males for each other is created in this episode of the creation of the demons by Brahma. I read this to him, and he was stunned, he couldn't say anything. In other words, the homosexual appetite of a man for another man is demoniac and is not for any sane male in the ordinary course of life. There you are.
Yeah.
And the same thing for what you would call them, the ladies, the lesbians, the same thing. Lesbians and homosexuals. It's called homosex, whether you're a female or a male. You want to have sex with the same sex. And by the way, these groups of people are very virulent about maintaining their identity, not as a devotee, but as a homosexual devotee or a lesbian devotee. Yeah, and there was this one sannyasi who was a homosexual also, and he became the homosexual group's sannyasi, and they used to celebrate Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day, where they would invite the homosexual sannyasi and they'd have a ceremony on Valentine's Day, which is not any bona fide ceremony, any bona fide festival on Krishna consciousness. In other words, you know what Valentine's Day is, right?
Yeah.
You have to choose someone to be your Valentine.
Mm-hmm.
The whole thing is crazy. It's like insane. But no, there was a homosexual sannyasi, and they were celebrating Valentine's Day when he would come and say some mantras.
But is the sannyasi still engaged in? Because that is not appropriate, right?
Well, I haven't seen him for a long, long time. He's probably still alive.
He was homosexual at one point and he became a devotee and sannyasi, really. Because then again, just like the same way you said,
He continued to be a homosexual even after becoming a devotee. Yeah. He sort of, faked his way through to become a sannyasi.
Hmm.
And then he continued even after that. So in other words, yeah, there was a time when he was like what you would call straight, but then he revealed his real, let's say, colors and went back to being what he was before. So he was a very smart person to become a and he was able to become a sannyasi by following all the rules and regulation, or at least seemingly to follow them. He sort of bluffed his way through all the requirements and he became a sannyasi. And then he became the sannyasi for the homosexuals in Berkeley. Okay. Now let me read this one more time so we get it really straight. It appears here that the homosexual appetite of males for each other is created in this episode of the creation of the demons by Brahma. In other words, the homosexual appetite of a man for another man is demoniac and is not for any sane male in the ordinary course of life. So this is Srila Prabhupada, and he's not mincing his words. In other words, he's not holding back and trying to circumvent this statement. So this is the truth that the homosexuals are sinful demons. They were created. Brahma created them because Krishna ordered him to do it. And they are born infuriated by an appetite for sex and have come. And as soon as they were born, they wanted to have sex with Brahma. And it appears here that the homosexual appetite of males for each other is created in this episode of the creation of the demons by Brahma. In other words, the homosexual appetite of a man for another man is demoniac and is not for any sane male in the ordinary course of life. Hari Bol. This is like the gospel truth here. Okay, so text 27. My Lord, you are the only one capable of ending the affliction of the distressed and inflicting agony on those who never resort to your feet. In other words, who never surrender to the Lord. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The words Klesadas Tesam Anasana Padam Tava indicate that the Lord has two concerns. The first is to give protection to persons who take shelter of his lotus feet. And the second is to give trouble to those who are always demoniac and who are inimical or hateful toward the Lord. Maya's function is to give afflictions to the non-devotees. That means Maya's function is to give suffering to the non-devotees. Here Brahma said, you are the protector of the surrendered souls. Therefore, I surrender unto your lotus feet. Please give me protection from these demons. So who are the demons? They're the homosexuals who are trying to have sex with their father, Lord Brahma. You see how it was right there in the beginning of time. It's not something new that's come up lately. The homosexuals have been there from the beginning of time. And they're demons. And Prabhupada says the homosexual appetite of a man for another man is demoniac and is not for any sane male in the ordinary course of life. But yet, there were homosexuals who were initiated in ISKCON. And they had a homosexual sannyasi that would perform yagyas for them. So it's unbelievable that they can do these things completely ignoring what's in the Shastra. Okay, so we go to text 27. My Lord, you are the only one capable of ending the affliction of the distressed and inflicting agony on those who never resort to your feet. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The words, Klesadas testam anasana padam tava, indicate that the Lord has two concerns. The first is to give protection to persons who take shelter of his lotus feet. And the second is to give trouble to those who are always demoniac and who are inimical toward the Lord. Maya's function is to give afflictions to the non-devout. Here Brahma said, you are the protector of the surrendered souls. Therefore, I surrender unto your lotus feet. Please give me protection from these demons. Who are the demons? The homosexual sons of Brahma. There you go. And Brahma in the previous verse says, my Lord, please protect me from these sinful demons who were created by me under your order. They are infuriated by an appetite for sex and have come to attack me. So this is nothing new. There have been homosexuals since the beginning of time. And Prabhupada says, it appears here that the homosexual appetite of males for each other is created in this episode of the creation of the demons by Brahma. That means they're demons. And that's the same thing for homosexuals or for lesbians, who are women that like to have sex with women. In other words, the homosexual appetite of a man for another man, is demoniac and is not for any sane male in the ordinary course of life. Okay, so that's the truth. Are there any questions? So we'll go to the next verse. My Lord, you are the only one capable of ending the affliction of the distressed and inflicting agony on those who never resort to your feet. Purport. Srila Prabhupada. The words Klesadas Tisam Anastana Padam Tava indicate that the Lord has two concerns. The first is to give protection to persons who take shelter of his lotus feet, and the second is to give trouble to those who are always demoniac and who are inimical toward the Lord. So this is a true story that there was the leader of the homosexuals in Berkeley, California, some homosexual devotees. He called me up. He used to call me a lot. And he said, Prabhu, I'm dying. I won't live much longer. Oh, I said, well, I'm really sorry to hear that. He said, can you send a brahmachari to help me? Because there's a lot of things I can't do now because of my sickness. His sickness was AIDS. I said, well, I can send you a lady. She's a wonderful lady, and she'll cook for you. She'll clean the house, and she will, be a real help. He said, I don't want a lady. Send a brahmachari. I said, look, I'm not going to send a brahmachari. You see how crazy they are. The man's dying, right? He calls me up. He wants to have someone to come and help him. And I said, yeah, I'll send you a nice lady. She'll cook for you. She'll clean the house. She'll, do the laundry and everything. I don't want a lady. I want a brahmachari. I said, I'm not going to send a brahmachari. I said, you were just trying to corrupt that boy, So this is just to show you how crazy these people are. The man is dying. He's asking for help. but it has to be a man. It can't be a woman to come and help him. Now you see how crazy they are. Okay.
Even in the last stage, also
Yeah.
life, that much attachment.
Oh, yeah. They don't
Yeah.
let go. They don't let go. And then sometime after that, maybe it was like a couple months, he died of AIDS. Now, how did he get AIDS? He was engaged in homosexual activity. So it's a very unclean thing to do. Sex already is unclean, but homosexuality is even worse. It's even worse, unclean thing to do. So it's not surprising that they get sick. They get these terrible diseases like the what do you call that? Well, the disease that he died from. Yeah, AIDS. Yeah, well, there's different levels of AIDS, but the worst level is you die. Okay, some people can manage their having AIDS. AIDS goes through several, let's say, uh, several stages. Yeah, the worst stage is AIDS, but before that, it's called something else. I forget. And they can manage it by taking certain drugs. So they can live for a long time taking those drugs. Okay. Now see, this is a very important statement that Krishna has two concerns, two things that he thinks about and acts on. The first is to give protection to persons who take shelter of his lotus feet. So that should be what we do as devotees, to take protection of the Lord and surrender to his lotus feet. The second thing that the Lord does is to give trouble to those who are always demoniac and who are inimical toward the Lord. Maya's function is to give afflictions, meaning sufferings, to the non-devotees. Here Brahma said, "You are the protector of the surrendered souls. Therefore, I surrender unto your lotus feet. Please give me protection from the demons." So there are such things as devotees who were homosexuals before, but who have given up that appetite to follow Krishna consciousness. And there are other uh, devotees who have not given up that tendency to be a homosexual. So can we actually call them devotees? Well, yeah, they're devotees who are violating the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness. The whether you're a person who's still called straight and you violate the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness, or whether you're homosexual and you violate the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness, both ways you are violating the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness. So you can't really be a functioning homosexual and chant Hare Krishna and expect to be purified. As long as anyone has bad habits, it can be meat eating, it can be gambling, it could be intoxication, or it can be illicit sex. As long as you're engaged or someone is engaged like that, they're violating the rules and regulations. Some people say, well, I follow 3 of the rules. No, you have to follow all 4. And that's not good enough. You're following 3. You know, they're crazy people like that. They say, well, I follow 3, So, okay. So, my Lord, you are the only one capable of ending the affliction of the distressed and inflicting agony on those who never resort to your feet. Yeah, that's what Krishna will do. First is to give protection to persons who take shelter of his lotus feet. And the second is to give trouble to those who are always demoniac and who are inimical toward the Lord. Maya's function is to give afflictions to the non-devotees. Here Brahma said, you are the protector of the surrendered souls. Therefore I surrender unto your lotus feet. Please give me protection from these demons. So who is he talking to here? You are the protector of the surrendered souls. Talking to Krishna.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, we're almost finished. Are there any questions?
And this particular two concerns that's in Bhagavad Gita, Paritrana,
Sadhana. Yes. He gives protection to the devotees who take shelter at his lotus feet, and he gives trouble to those who are always demoniac and who are inimical toward the Lord. So we should become a devotee. We shouldn't be someone who's demoniac, because the Lord is going to give the demons problems, sufferings. Look what happens. Someone becomes homosexual, and then they have what you would call promiscuous relationships with many men, and they eventually get AIDS, and they eventually die terribly. I've seen people. I knew this one devotee. He had AIDS, and uh, it, uh, there are ways of there are medicines you can take nowadays to sort of manage it, but eventually you're going to die. And this one devotee, he lost some fingers, he lost different appendages of his body. They just deteriorated and fell off, right? And it was horrible. So these things are very unclean. Let's put it like that. Very, very unclean. And it just causes sickness and death. Nowadays, they have a lot of drugs they can take to sort of manage it for a certain period of time. But eventually, it catches up to them and they die. Okay. Yeah, and that person who's asking me, to have homosexual programs in the temple, and I said no. A couple years later, he was dead, died from AIDS. All right, so I think we're almost done. Yeah.
Maharaj, as you have mentioned, someone is breaking rule, and should we call them devotee, or they are devotee or not? So Prabhupada also mentioned in one of the lecture, like,
What did he
if
say?
someone is doing nonsense, like, they cannot continue both things together. So Prabhupada had mentioned, therefore two things must go on in parallel. One side, a person should cultivate Krishna consciousness, and another side, he should try to give up all unwanted things.
In tandem. Is that what he says? In tandem.
Therefore, two things must go on in parallel lines.
Oh, in parallel lines. Okay.
One side, a person should cultivate Krishna consciousness, and another side, he should try to give up all the unwanted things.
Yeah.
That will help him. You cannot continue both the things.
Exactly.
Just like when a person is diseased, he is given medicine. At the same times, he has to act not to take this, not to take that. That is the way of treatment. Not that whatever you like, you can eat, whatever you like, you can do. At the same times, you become spiritually advanced. This is all nonsense.
Mm-hmm. You have to follow the rules.
with do's and don'ts.
Yes. Well, if you follow rules, you don't do the bad things. But yes, you have to follow rules and regulations and give up the bad habits. That's Krishna consciousness. Okay, I think we're finished for today, unless there are some questions.
Hare Krishna, any questions? So Bhagavatam describes pretty much everything.
Yeah. Nothing is left unknown.
Yeah.
Or wishy-washy. Everything is perfectly clear.
I mean, right now in the current society,
Yeah.
this particular category, like homosexuality, is being normalized, where like some of the same people are even teachers. They're
Yeah.
in all parts of.
But they've been there since the beginning of time, as we see.
Yeah.
But they try now to make it look like there's nothing wrong with it. Yeah.
They are doing exactly opposite. Bhagavatam says they are demonic, but now they are saying they are normal.
No, they say that people who are not like them are missing something. So without reading Bhagavatam, we will never figure out what is right and what is wrong.
Correct. They want to make it look like
it's okay.
It's okay because they're creative. I mean, they focus on the skills part of things.
Yeah, they're creative. They usually have money. Not all of them, but some of them are very rich.
Yeah.
And they make you think that it's they're a good thing to do. But Prabhupada and the Vaishnavas, they're very explicit. It's demoniac. So, and Krishna, he gives trouble to those who are always demoniac and who are inimical toward the Lord. So a homosexual who's a practicing homosexual cannot be a friend of the Lord. If they give up, let's say they were a homosexual, and now they've given it up, they can become a devotee. But if they want to be a devotee and at the same time engage in homosex, doesn't work. Someone will say, well, it works for me, but it doesn't work in the eyes of Krishna. He will not forgive that person if they just continue sinning like that. You have to give up sinful activity, whether you're a man or a woman, whether it's intoxication or it's illicit sex. You have to give up these things to be called a devotee. You can't continue doing these things and call yourself a devotee. It is an oxymoron again. Two things that are opposite to each other. So in other words, you cannot break the principles and at the same time claim that you're a devotee. You have to stop breaking the principles and start following them strictly. Otherwise, you're violating the sacred principles of Krishna consciousness. No meat eating, no intoxication, no illicit sex, and no meat eating, no intoxication, no illicit sex, no gambling. Yeah. Okay, so I think we'll stop right there. And unless anybody has a question.
I don't see anybody. Any questions? If not, we will again see you in the evening.
Haribo, Haribo, Haribo. Glory to Srila Prabhupada ki jai jai.